Hello, YouTube. Luigi here. I don't have a script. I have thoughts. I'm just going to talk. I'm going to talk about enough. Enough already. Is that enough? No, I want to supersize that. When is enough enough? Do we have enough? Why do we always want more, bigger, faster, better, more expensive? I grew up in a family of 7 children. I was the oldest son. Still am the oldest son. And one income was enough. Think of that. One income was enough to raise a family of 7, to pay the bills and put the food on the table. One income. Mom stayed at home. And I have wonderful memories of my stay at home mom. One car was enough for 9 people. One telephone wired to the wall was enough for 9 people. One television with 3 channels, and you had to get your lazy butt out of your chair to change the channel, was enough for 9 people. We thought we lived great. This lust for more and more hadn't really crept into the fiber of American society yet. I don't know when it happened, but it was insidious when it did. And once it took hold, I'm going to relate it to other causes, but once it took hold, it just sort of swept us aside. And it only goes to show how well Madison Avenue has done its job in convincing us that we need to go out and buy more and more garbage that we don't need and pay for it with money that we don't have. How much is enough? Would you be satisfied with your enough? Or is there something else going on inside of you that fuels this compulsion to consume? Do you realize that if you wake up in the morning and have a choice of socks to put on, you're among the 20% richest people on the planet? Do we understand that in this country? What we have versus what other people don't have? There's no shame in honest wealth. I want to say that right off the top. There's no shame in honest wealth. But there's an old cliche, and cliches don't come out of nowhere, people. Don't nowhere, double negative. That's exactly what I mean to say. Cliches do not come out of nowhere. They come out of somewhere. There's an old cliche that says, behind every fortune is a crime. If you built your fortune on the backs of the powerless, exploiting them, if that's how you made your money, shame on you. Consider this. The Wall family, the Walmart people, one of the richest families in the solar system, for God's sake. Do you realize that I've heard different numbers, 50, 60, 70, 75, 80% of their employees are on food stamps, while the CEO is making $200, $300 million a year? What does that mean? It means taxpayers like you and I are subsidizing the fortune of the Wall family so they can underpay their people, but the people can still eat because you and I are buying them food stamps. It's called the inequitable distribution of wealth. Now, I'm not for handing out freebies to the lazy or the ignorant or the illiterate or the untalented or people who have no marketable skills whatsoever. That's not where I am coming from. But I do want to speak out against the exploitation of the weak and the powerless by the big and the powerful, the strong and the powerful. So where does this come from? Walmart and the food stamp subsidy, for example. And no one should be shocked to hear this. The rich own our legislators, and they pass laws that favor the rich because the legislators are in the pockets of the slimy special interests. Think of that. We have back in the election of 1976, I voted for Jimmy Carter, and I'm glad I did. I still think he's one of the best people who ever became president. I'm not saying his administration didn't have its share of problems, but you know, he was a sincere man, and I think that's what got him elected. People were tired of the BS from politicians. Nonetheless, in that 1976 primary election, which means it was in 75, I voted for Jerry Brown. Why? He had a phrase way back then that's even 1,000 times more pertinent today. He talked about the entire government in Washington as one of entrenched corruption. 76. That resonated so deeply with me. Entrenched corruption. I voted for the guy. And by the way, people like to get on bandwagons and vote for winners. Boy, if there was ever a time when you needed to vote your heart, it's a primary. Because you're not electing anybody. You're trying to get somebody to be the nominee for your party. Entrenched corruption. The levels of corruption in this country put the Russian oligarchs to shame these days. The whole reason we have a climate in crisis, a planet in crisis with its climate, is because of the slimy fossil fuel industry. I mean, we've known, you know, there was a physicist who back in the 1800s did this experiment with a greenhouse with normal atmosphere in it and another one that he pumped carbon dioxide in it, and he watched the temperature rise off the chart in the CO2 greenhouse. This has been a known fact of physics for a long time. In 1978 or 9, I believe, Jim Hansen, then a NASA climate scientist, now he's on his own, the so-called godfather of climate science, went before Congress and pleaded his heart out in the most impassioned speech you ever heard, predicting the doom we're seeing today relative to climate crisis. We are a planet in crisis, fueled by what? The slimy fossil fuel industry. We've known this. I mean, we've known about alternative technologies for decades and decades and decades now. We lack the political will. We got a guy in Washington right now who thinks climate change is a hoax, and yet his Mar-de-Lago or Lago, whatever that mansion he has in Florida, it's not that much above sea level, and it's targeted as one of those properties most likely to flood in a storm surge. So he can talk about hoax all he wants, and his own property, he's probably not going to be able to unload it someday. Where did this come from? This is I'm going back, circling back to enough. What is enough? You know, there's this great line in the movie Chinatown where Jack Nicholson is talking to John Huston. I forget their names, their character names. And he says, "How much money do you have? Do you have 10 million? Do you have 20 million?" He goes, "Yeah, around there." And he says, "Well, how much better can you eat with 10 million versus 1 million? How much better can you live? How much warmer can you be in the winter? What is enough? How much do you need? How much do you need?" Now consider this. You individually, as a single person, might be able to afford a life of drunken consumerism, just drunkenly, compulsively amassing as much garbage as you can. You know, the old, who's the idiot who came up with the saying, "He who dies with the most toys wins"? Yeah, those toys are going to be a great comfort to that guy on his deathbed, I can assure you. He who dies with the most toys wins. That typifies this compulsion, this need to consume. And guess what? It's not very satisfying, is it? You get bored with the new toy you just bought, or it breaks because it's a piece of junk anyway. So you have to go out and get more and more and more toys, because the toys, you realize, if you think at all, they don't make you happy. They don't quench that unquenchable thirst within you. They're not satisfying that hunger within you, which is why you're driven by compulsion, because there's this void inside of you that only God can fill. So I'm pointing to when we became, whenever it happened, a secular society, a godless society. There's this void inside us that only God can fill. And when you shut God out of your life, the void is still there, the thirst is still there, the hunger is still there. So what do? We fill our lives with vapid, shallow, materialistic distractions, buying things, noise, moving around. We can't sit still. Blaise Pascal, the great French mathematician and philosopher, has this wonderful saying: the sole cause of man's unhappiness is that he can't sit quietly alone in his room. One of my favorite proverbs is, be still and know that I am God. Wow. Now, do you know to how many people that stillness, that quietude is absolutely terrifying? Because it's under those circumstances that the pain of the void within them comes to the fore, and they reach out to the material world to try to quench this thirst that can't be quenched with garbage. And yet we keep going there and trying to do that. You know, just because you can afford to buy an inordinate amount of junk doesn't necessarily mean the planet can afford to give you more than your fair share of resources. Think about that. What is fair? What do you have in such great plenitude when others have nothing and you're hogging the resources, and it makes the stinking little that's left more expensive for others, you know? So, enough. You know, I believe I've gone through many materialistic purges in my life where I rented a 20-yard dumpster and threw 90% of what I owned away. Got another dumpster and threw what little was left away, and never felt more unencumbered in my life. Never felt closer to God in my life, because I refused to allow Madison Avenue to lead me to become a sheep and just blindly consume for its own sake. The junk we have, look around you, look what's in your house. I bet you could throw out 80% of what you see and live fine. Live better than most people on the planet. We have so much in this country, it's almost a crime. It's almost a crime. Yeah, capitalism, free economy, well, capitalism is great if it's founded on values. If you think making money is the highest value, try to impress God with your checking account, with your real estate portfolio, with your stock portfolio. Just see how impressed God is with that stuff. Let's bring some real values into our lives. Let's become people. Let's embrace sincerity and love and compassion. Let's serve and minister to our fellows. Let's treat them as we want to be treated. You know, I heard this interesting thing how after the earthquake in Haiti, it was the citizens, and this is a poor nation. This is a dirt poor nation. I think our president had a different term for them, which I can't say, or YouTube will, have a cow here. It was the citizens who got out there and dug through the rubble when they heard cries and rescued people. At Katrina, it was the citizens who got into their boats and fished people off of roofs and out of windows and flooded houses, and because the rescue forces, the EMTs, were so overly taxed. In Houston, where they got 40 inches of rain, it was again the citizens, the compassionate citizens. And these weren't rich people, these were average schmoes, man, but they hadn't lost their souls yet. They felt this need to serve their fellows, and they went out there and saved them in boats, as many as they could. So getting back to Haiti and this earthquake, I heard this guy talk about this very thing. It was the poor people who helped the poor people. And one guy says, no, that's not true. That's not true. The American billionaires went down there, like sharks smelling blood. And they saw an opportunity where they could buy up damaged, destroyed, foreclosed, mortgaged properties for pennies on the dollar. Kick the poor out of their crummy houses to begin with, and start to amass great tracts of land, probably with the look to putting in luxury casinos and luxury hotels by evicting the poor. Yeah, that's what the rich do. They go down there and they smell blood. But the poor people get out there in their boats and they help their own. Who is more pleasing in the eyes of God? The fat cat with the bank account or the guy with the rowboat? All right, people, you are the architect of your destiny. You will be held accountable for the choices you've made. No one's going to judge you by the amount of money in your account, but you will be held accountable for the choices you made. Choose wisely. Treat your fellows as you would want them to treat you. All right. God bless you all. I love you very much. Take good care and be good to each other. Bye-bye.